Welcome back to the Mental Health Hour on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio. I'm your host, Felicia Fishoff, registered psychotherapist and founder of Rooted in Resilience Psychotherapy and Wellness. And tonight, we're back because in part one, we had a conversation that was honest, vulnerable, and deeply needed. And the truth is, we couldn't hold all of it in one space. So tonight, we continue the conversation. Bring your whole self, but not that self, the workplace lie, part two. And tonight, our Real Talk panel is back, continuing a conversation that clearly needed more space. Because let's be honest, it's one thing to talk about authenticity in the workplace, but it's another thing entirely to ask, what does it mean to show up fully when your life outside of work doesn't feel safe, stable, or supported? Tonight, we're going deeper. In part one, we talked about authenticity, professionalism, and psychological safety in the workplace. But tonight, we're telling the truth more directly. Because for many women, especially racialized women, this conversation doesn't start and end at work. People are showing up as high performing professionals while navigating real heavy situations in their personal lives. And we don't talk about that enough. We're talking about going to work while experiencing domestic violence, managing emotional abuse, financial control, or instability behind the scenes, holding everything together on the outside while things are falling apart privately, and still being expected to perform, produce, and present a version of yourself that feels acceptable. Because the truth is, some people are not just managing their jobs, they are managing survival in silence. And I'm honored to be joined again by our incredible Real Talk panel. Tonight, we have joining us Charlene Lex, a registered psychotherapist, Christian life coach, and faith and mental health expert supporting individuals and organizations in emotional and spiritual well being. We also have Natasha Pennycook, a trauma informed, multi award winning psychotherapist, leadership strategist, and speaker who works with high performing professionals navigating burnout and complex workplace dynamics, each bringing depth, insight, and lived awareness to the conversations we're holding tonight. But before we continue, just a quick reminder that while we are mental health professionals, this show is for educational and community conversation purposes only. It is not a substitute for therapy, diagnoses, or crisis support. If something comes up for you during tonight's conversation, we encourage you to reach out to a licensed professional or local support services in your area. And as we move into this conversation, we want to invite you in. What are you carrying that people don't see? What does it cost you to hold it together in professional spaces? Guess what? Tonight, you don't have to hold that alone. The chat is open, Love Bay family. You are welcome to call in or share your thoughts in the live chat because your voice is part of this conversation too. And even if you don't share, we want you to know that you are not alone in what you're carrying. Good night, ladies. How you
Good night.
doing?
Good night.
Night. How's everyone
Hey,
doing?
girl, we made it. We made it.
We made it. We survived April.
Can you believe it's the end of April already?
Right? I was saying that today. Where did the time go?
I feel like we just said Happy New Year. Come on.
We
Talk
did.
the
We're still saying Happy New Year. What are you talking about?
truth. Although I must say that I'm so happy to see a little green grass. For those of you around the globe that are listening that have green grass at your leisure, we are jelly.
And
Very
warm
jelly.
weather. We want some of that. Send it over to Canada.
Yes, please. I mean, I heard some birds chirping yesterday. It made my heart so happy. I said, it's coming. It's coming.
Slowly but surely. Listen, it was
So
snowing. Was it last Friday? 2 Fridays ago? It was still snowing? Please.
I chose to be in denial. I said, nope. So I made some very spicy jerk chicken. I felt bad for my youngest because the whole time he's like, oh,
But at least he knows what to do. He knows it's good food.
he's like, milk, mommy, milk.
Oh, oh, good dear. Poor thing.
I'm like, we need the heat, son. We need the heat.
Burn his little belly.
When the pepper used to burst in the pot, guys, as a child, you had to drink that soup same way. So I'm just
Seriously.
Yeah,
breaking them in.
yeah, but you gotta pull it out before it pops.
you know, right? Oh my goodness. Well, ladies, after I know that after our last real talk, when we left the conversation, we're like, why this conversation is not done because
No.
it is such a big topic. And I know that we had received some positive feedback about even just the depth and the vulnerability from our last show. And we
Yeah.
wanted to really deepen tonight's conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because yes, there is that workplace dynamic where we feel like we aren't able to really bring ourselves fully into the workplace, but it's so much more deeply nuanced than that, right? But
Yeah.
also humans that have lives outside of the workplace,
Yes. Yes.
right? And so why do we need to be talking about this angle tonight with the Love Bay family?
Yeah. I think it's really important that we're all professionals here,
Mhm.
mental health professionals, having this conversation while
Yes.
at the same time showing our humanity. And I think last conversation, we all shared
Yeah.
really open, honest, and vulnerable pieces. And I think there's just a stigma out there that mental health professionals or don't struggle, or we've never gone through things, or we know how to figure things, how to do all the things, right? I want to
Mm,
tell everybody that is false in some ways.
very
We
much
are
so.
human. We've gone through things. The reality is, and I don't think a lot of people recognize this, a lot of, and I because I'm
Yeah.
only speaking for myself, but I've gotten into this role because of a lot of the trauma that I've
Yep.
experienced,
Yep.
right? And that
Here,
is
here.
similar for a lot of my colleagues and other professionals. We do this so good at it because we've lived it. We've literally
Yes.
lived it. So not only are we able to see you and understand you, but a
Yeah.
lot of us are still navigating some of our stuff too. We've just have that
100.
higher level being able to help you and support you because we see you and we've been there. So I don't want
Mm,
anyone to think that that when we're talking about like the pressures and the burnout of the workplace, we've all gone through and been in workplaces where our mental health has struggled. And I think last
yes.
time really showcased that, right? And it's
Yes.
important for people to see it because it shows people that, hey, we're human too, and we're navigating too. We don't have all the answers. Yes, we're
Yes.
professionals, we can help you, but we're human just like everyone else. So I want to put that out there that if anyone is feeling like really alone and really isolated and feeling like they may not have space, bring it
Yes.
here. We get it. We see you. We can help you, support you. We can help you navigate how to get the support, but do not do it alone.
Yes. Mm,
Mhm.
so well said. So well said, girl. So well said.
I think it's interesting this idea that you said within the intro of surviving in silence. That's the thing. So
Mm-hmm.
many women are surviving in silence, right? They're going out to work, they're doing all the
Yeah.
things. They're seen as being superstars in their field, right? They
Mm-hmm.
they are like managing as best as they can, and yet all of these other things, right? The stressors of living in places where people don't appreciate them,
Yes.
where they're racialized, where they're having to put up with macro and microaggressions, where
Yes.
they're having to then put up with people just being outrightly rude, racist, all of it, you name it,
Yes.
then coming home and having to then deal
Mm-hmm.
with issues within their home and their families and things like that, and having to then suffer in silence,
Yes.
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're putting a name to this tonight, right? We want these different women to recognize that they're not alone, right? Many Black women are going through this.
Yes.
Important for us to actually name the things that we're going through so that we can actually encourage and exhort women to get the help and the support that they need so that they
Yeah.
can get through it no longer in silence, but get through it with support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that there is a cultural nuance to this with regards to this feeling that we have to carry all these pieces and hide certain parts of ourselves,
Mm,
right? Especially that part that struggles, right? There's just something so vulnerable about that piece that we feel like I don't want anyone to see that I'm struggling,
mm-hmm.
right? Let's talk a little bit about that. What is your take on it?
Yeah. I think that there's this piece around the world still equates vulnerability as
Mm,
weakness,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because the world still equates vulnerability as weakness, there's this piece connected to I have to, quote unquote, I have to be in silence about this, or else
mhm,
I'm going to be seen as not capable. And not capable on so
mm,
many levels within the workplace, within the family, within community, within friendships, right? And this piece
yeah.
around being fearful to not look capable has had real implications. There have been people who have lost jobs, who have been demoted, have
Mm,
not been promoted because of sharing somebody's vulnerability. So not only is it there's a stigma, but there's some people who
mhm,
still operate by that stigma, which then
mm,
perpetuates the idea and the understanding that I cannot share this. I have to be in isolation. I have to stay quiet and hush hush about it, which means
mm,
that I'm not getting the help and the support that I desperately need because I have to
yeah,
hide it, right? So we have to actually
absolutely.
understand how the system still plays into these narratives and how
Yes,
hurtful and harmful they are for a lot of the women out there, women and men and different folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Let's get granular too, though. Who's allowed to be vulnerable, right? Like, I think when we look at womanhood, right, who's allowed to be vulnerable?
Yes,
Because
yes.
we do get these messages very loud and clear. It doesn't have to be like told explicitly, right? Like, one of the things that we learn within family systems theory is that there's things that are like said explicitly,
Right.
there's things that are more implicit,
Yeah,
right? But the things that are more implicit, those covert rules,
yeah,
right? They actually like they land harder within us. We all know it. It doesn't have to be said, but man, we're all adhering to it. Okay?
yeah.
This is the thing. In society, we have these rules, right?
Yes.
And these rules are covert. It's not named, right? It's not
Mhm.
explicit, but man, we know who's allowed to be vulnerable and who's not.
Yes.
We're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And who weaponizes
Yep.
vulnerability,
Yep.
right? We have to, yeah.
Yep.
Right? But that's the
Mhm.
piece. It's who weaponizes that vulnerability and who utilizes the system to support the
Mhm.
weaponizing of that vulnerability. Because like,
Yes.
one of the things I love, let's be real in this conversation,
Mhm.
Mhm.
but we all know there's a certain subset of individuals, whether you want to call them Karens or not, who will weaponize vulnerability at the drop of a hat. So we
Mhm.
have to look at that. And that weaponization of vulnerability does not only happen walking down the street, but it's very much happening in the
Yep.
workplace as well,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Which
Mhm.
again has real implications
Mhm.
for women, for Black women who are working their way up, who are
Yep.
caring for their families, who are caregivers, who are struggling with their own peace. So, this idea that you have to hold it because it's not safe to be vulnerable is very real.
Mhm.
100%.
Yep.
And
Right.
then there's that systemic barrier that we're already facing as women,
Mhm.
right? Because we're already overworked, we're underpaid, you know, the fact that, you know, we sacrifice a lot in terms of, you know, child rearing, taking time
Mhm.
off. We love our babies, don't get me wrong, we do. But it is a sacrifice, right? We sacrifice time. That's time out of our careers a lot of times, you know, because we are investing in our children and our family, right?
Mhm.
And that is in addition to all of these things, these systemic cultural barriers within the workplace, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even just the word fragility. There's just certain words we just don't have access to, right?
Mm.
Like when we think about this idea of you can be fragile and dainty, do you think about someone who looks like me being fragile and dainty,
I
right?
mean, you look cute, McCann.
Right. I always try to look cute, but
Yeah, man.
I'm just like getting us to see how the very words that we use in society, how it
Yes,
includes
Mhm.
some people and excludes others,
yes,
right?
yes.
So it's like we have young women coming up and they can't even conceive of what that could be, look like, right?
Mm,
This whole idea in the last like year or so, right, since all of the elections down south of where we are in Canada, right, and like Black women deciding that they're going to tap out,
mm,
right? We're not
mm-hmm,
fighting the fight anymore. We tried. We're
mm,
tapping out, right?
mm-hmm,
And then they're actually trying to then trying to be soft, trying to find their softness, right?
mm,
This is so important. It's so important because again, this is an arena we've been excluded from for so long, right? And I'm glad that Black women are trying to like figure themselves out in this space of how to be soft, how to be fragile, how to actually treat themselves with gentleness. All of those things need to happen because, again, those words are not used to describe us, so we've not learned how to do it. And the women before
mm,
us didn't have that opportunity. So it's a
mm,
huge time for young Black women to kind of explore some of these concepts. But man, it's not easy.
mm, mm. Bye. I'm not just dropping all the dumpling, eh? Okay. All right. So, in addition to all of this, right? Like, okay, so we're talking about, you know, bring our whole selves, but not that self, the workplace lie. You know, when we think about the different things that women navigate,
Mm,
right? And because we don't feel like we can be vulnerable, that we can be soft, that we have to put up a front because, oh, like I can't show that, you know, I'm struggling right now, or my job will be on the line. You know, it's already a struggle just in the everyday, much less an
mm,
additional layer of stuff. And I was wondering if we could really touch on domestic violence because I know that especially lately in light of, you know, the tragedy it, down south, you know, with, I think her name is Nancy Mateer, and you know she passed because of domestic violence. um, you know, it brought up the topic again. And you know domestic violence happens around us, you know, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. It's there, it's happening. But again, we feel like we can't. I don't know. It's like it's complicated because obviously, you know, it is a cycle of abuse, right? But I feel like especially in on this side of the globe, right? Like we're in silos when it comes to work. And
Mhm.
how does someone who's experiencing things like abuse or domestic violence cope with that reality while they're trying to put food on the table and take care of their family? Like, let's talk a little bit about that.
It's a hard one. It's a really, really hard one because what it means is that there is a real part of their personal life that they have to keep siloed and quiet and silent to be
Mm,
able to manage the day to day so that they can work and get food on table and maybe even plan and strategize to save money to get out of a situation, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
is a really, really hard one. And I think the one of the ways to, for anyone listening who's in that situation, it's finding the supports around you within a community, friends circle,
Mm-hmm.
other spaces of people who understand and who are really and seriously able to support you to navigate out of it. Because the hardest thing is, and we know these stats in domestic violence situations, sometimes it takes a woman 7 times to leave to actually leave. And
Mhm.
that's a lot, right? And every time the leaving and going back, it escalates things in the household, which means it gets worse and the
Mm-hmm.
situation gets worse. So we really have to put things in place where hitting supports at the forefront for
Mm-hmm.
anyone who's navigating this, and for workplaces, if you recognize that there may be someone going through this, offer different supports. If you have an EAP, or if you have other access to other resources, offer those resources. Maybe make space where it's safe, right? If there's ability to have childcare within, or access to childcare, bring that, because a lot of the women who are going through these situations and who have children are very concerned about their children's well-being, or even if their children are going to be taken or parented while they're out at work or school or things like that. Allow women in this situation to take phone calls, to contact the school, to take those calls, or even if it's needing to take time off of work to organize self, right? Being able to do that. And this is a really, really big piece. And, we've seen the numbers going up, especially in the post COVID world, right? During COVID, we
Yeah.
saw numbers going up. We saw that became a really real situation as safety places were no longer accessible. So we
Mhm.
have to really think about how we are creating more access to these resources and support.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. 100%. 100.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Like, I know that, right now there is this, you know, trend, which I think it's a healthy trend, where, we're talking more about mental health services and stuff within the workplace. Albeit, I will say it nice and clear, especially for those in Canada and Ontario. They please, the employers, if you're listening, can you please put more benefits for mental health services?
Mhm.
Please.
Yes,
$500 will not cut it in the private.
Mhm.
That's
it's
like what, 3.5 sessions? Three, maybe? Maybe,
maybe two.
maybe 2 to 3. And
Hmm.
that's just not enough to sustain people who, like, you want to be preventative,
Mhm.
right?
Yes,
You
yes,
don't want your staff, your team to wait until they're in crisis before they access supports, right? But then I think that there's also something to be said, because we want people to bring their whole selves, to give us their best, but we're not willing to hold the sticky stuff or to give them space when they are actually going through those difficult things.
yeah,
Mhm.
And as y'all know, y'all are therapists, you know what our clients are bringing to the table, and the difficulty and the pain that they are navigating every single day,
yeah.
but yet they
And
show up.
but yet
Yeah.
they show up. And I do want to give a shout out to workplaces who are recognizing that they need in-house mental health consultants and support. Right? I
Yes.
have to give that shout out, because there are some organizations lately who have been
Yes.
reaching out, who are saying, hey, we want this in-house. Can you bring that
100.
in-house? And I know that's not the trend for a lot of organizations. And if that
Yeah.
is your organization and you want that to be, reach out, right? Reach out. You have 3 very capable therapists here. Reach out,
Eh,
because your employees do need that support, whether it is
100%.
in house and with EAP and with benefits. And make sure that you're really topping it up, because
Mm-hmm.
it's actually going to come back and help the workplace, the
100%.
productivity, the profit within the workplace. We have to make sure that people are well.
Yes. Yes.
I think it's interesting. Like, even as we hold this idea of workplaces supporting their employees, and also employees who are going to work and trying to hold it down when things at home are not good, right? This whole idea of just like intimate partner violence,
Yeah.
and then we're then pulling it to then see what
Mm,
is it like if we actually just put ourselves in that position for a moment, what is
mm,
it like for these women, right,
mm.
to actually like walk into a workplace and deal with all of the different workplace dynamics, all the stressors, that's just the regular everyday stressors, right? And in addition to all of those stressors, they're dealing with people being unkind because of the color of their skin, people feeling
Yes.
like they don't deserve to be in certain positions,
Mm-hmm.
right? People undermining the work that they're doing or stealing, taking the work that they're doing, right? Growing up, you hear about all of your different aunties and all of the different experiences that they're having at their workplace. And I'm
Mm,
thinking about those women right now, right? That were, they came up from the Caribbean. This is like now in the 70s, right? When they opened up
mm-hmm.
Canada immigration, and they were coming as domestics, right? They were coming as maids, they were coming,
Yeah.
and then they worked themselves into these different positions.
Mm-hmm.
Nurses, a lot
Mm-hmm.
ended up being nurses.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them end up working at banks and things
Yep.
like that, right? And working their way up and through the ranks. How many people they had to train
Mm-hmm.
only for those people to come around and be given those opportunities and those positions,
Yep.
right? And then on top of that, all of these things they're going
Mm-hmm.
through on a regular basis, it's hard
Mm-hmm.
home, and they're experiencing domestic violence.
Yeah.
They're experiencing hardship in the home. They're experiencing betrayals of trust. They're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing all of these hard things. But when you see them at work, you're hearing things like, "Oh well, you're very hard, or you're angry," and things like that. They're
Mm,
trying to cope. They're
Yeah.
trying to cope with the situation, but they're being told that they're showing up too hard, right? They're showing up too aggressive and all of these things, right? It all is a part of the cycle. And I've watched woman after woman who've gone before me try
mm,
to manage these situations that are extremely hard, so hard, and there's
mm,
nobody to help them to navigate it, nobody to give them if you do this or if you do that, this is how you can get through it and win and be victorious and be successful. And so they just put their heads down and they do their best. That's what I've seen. But for
mm,
the next generation coming behind us, we can't have them doing the same thing anymore, right?
mm,
This is where we have the space to talk about these topics, to unpack it, to say how unfair it is, and to actually say to these younger people to actually get the help. The truth is, some organizations will do what Natasha suggested. They will, right? They'll take
mhm,
the offer and they'll get that in-house therapist to help out. Right? They'll put more money towards benefits. They'll do all of those things, and some workplaces won't. A lot of
mm,
is unfortunately won't,
Yeah.
right?
mm,
The next generation of women coming up behind us, for the generation of women that we're part of now, how do we then equip us to then navigate a culture, a workplace culture within this country that's not going to support them?
mm,
How do we help them to sit with the disappointments of it,
Mm-hmm.
the disappointments at work, and then the coming home and the
yeah.
disappointments at home? How do we help them to navigate that? Because
Mm,
that's where the power sits. That's
mhm,
Mm-hmm.
where the change sits,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
empower them to be able to just face the situation and figure out how they can rise above it.
mm.
Absolutely.
That's where we can help.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can I add to that that for a lot of women, as they're sitting with it, whether with whatever situation, domestic violence, intimate partner violence,
Mhm.
there are some women who believe that that behavior is okay or it's been normalized. I know
Mhm.
that working with a
Yes.
number of women, I've been working at like a women's center, and there are some women who are coming in, and when we're talking about some of the stuff that they've experienced,
Mhm.
and then I'll say things like, well, that sounds like it's financial abuse. And
Mm,
there's hasn't been names for these kind of things before,
Mhm.
right? This has just
Mhm.
been the norm that they may have seen, that they may have grown up with, that they may have been around. So
mhm,
Mhm.
it's about also educating women,
mhm,
right? That yes, they're
Yes.
in their own in at home, in their personal life, in the workplace, how they're navigating, they're being called hard and maybe aggressive and other things, stereotypical things, without recognizing the hardships of what they're dealing with, but also being able to educate the women on what is intimate partner violence,
mhm,
what constitutes as abuse, what is financial abuse,
mhm,
right?
Mhm.
And I think that is one place where we could encourage people to build that awareness on what is abuse, because there's
yeah,
a spectrum here, right? Just like with other
Mhm.
mental health challenges, there's a spectrum, but understanding what constitutes as abuse on that spectrum, so that
mhm,
now
Mhm.
these women have the language to now say, hey, yes, I've been dealing with this for 5 years, but I'm
Mhm.
learning now that this is not correct. This is not right. I should not be treated this way. I
mhm,
shouldn't be the only one looking to pay bills and
Mhm.
saving and all of those things,
mhm,
right? Like those kind of things. So I think it's really important that we understand what
Mhm.
constitutes as abuse, and we're able to educate those around us on what these different pieces are. I know I have a colleague who's doing some really great work with the Canadian Centre of Women's Empowerment, who's been
Mhm.
getting out in Parliament on
mhm,
what's the
Mhm.
financial abuse is and getting bills passed. So we really
Yes.
need to let individuals know that, hey, these things exist. There's names for them, and you don't have to continue to do it and to take it and to be a part of it, that there are organizations out there that can support you. And even if the workplace is maybe not equipped or not set up, that there are organizations. And yes,
Mhm.
there is this piece around the workplace lie that everything's going to be okay. You're in the workplace, you're working way up and all of that. But sometimes these workplaces cannot support you in the ways that you deserve. It doesn't mean that you're any less deserving or any less worthy. It means that it's not set up for your success. So let's
mhm.
help you get success in different frames and get connected to the resources that are going to support.
Mhm. Absolutely. So you are listening to the Mental Health Hour on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. It helps us continue these important conversations and reach more people in our community. Download the Love Bay app on the Apple App Store or Google Play and stream us anytime. Visit lovebayradio.live to listen, support, and donate. Your contributions help us to continue serving you. And don't forget, you can call in and be part of the conversation tonight at 437-778-3299. We are here serving you 24/7. And you are listening to the Mental Health Hour. Absolutely. I think that, education is so important. I think community is so important because, again, I think because it's difficult to find a sense of safety within the workplace at times, right? We need to make sure that we're not in silos, right? And I know all the introverts out there are being like, oh, and but come on. we're made for community, right? And I think that when we can sharpen each other, that's where some of these conversations can be happening as well, right? Like, what is financial abuse, right? But for those listening tonight, why don't we talk a little bit about that piece about financial abuse? Because I don't think that we talk about that aspect enough, right? We talk about physical abuse, we talk about emotional abuse, but what is financial abuse?
Yeah, I can jump in. So financial abuse is interesting, right? Because we hear the words financial finances, money and abuse,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people think of the physical abuse, but this is the abuse of your money and or
Mm-hmm.
your ability to make money. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times what I've seen is like on either end, either it is someone who is capable to go and work, but they're withheld
Mm-hmm.
this piece around that they're withheld to go and work, or if they are working, that everything that a person is making is either taken from their partner, so the partner is taking those funds and they're keeping it and utilizing it, and or maybe a partner is not working or not
Mm-hmm.
putting themselves out there to work, and that means then the woman in this case in a hetero sexual relationship, they're paying for everything, right? So it's really where there's the abuse of the woman's ability to make money and to become financially safe and secure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I would also say it's the idea of control, right? Who is controlling the money, right? Do you have access to all of the
Yeah.
accounts, right? Do you have access to all of the bank accounts? Do you have access to all of the RSPs? Do you have
Yeah.
access to actually see everything? Like, can you actually put in the passwords and pull it up on your computer and see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of those things, that idea of control is very important because sometimes it's not as overt. Back to that word covert again. This is where it becomes so covert, and yet some women, that's the experience that they're having, right? And so it's just being able to empower women to understand the very vast continuum of what a financial abuse can look like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad that you guys are talking about, the nuances with it, right? Because, when it comes to any type of financial abuse, right? Especially like there's something about money and guilt and shame that go together,
Hmm.
right? And it can often be like weaponized or used as the dangling carrot,
Yeah.
right? Because it is linked to survival, right?
Hmm.
Yes.
You don't have money, you can't buy things, you can't put a roof over your head, you can't put food
Yes.
in your belly, and it's a power chip.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that's the piece, right? Money is it's a tool, right? It is a tool, and then not having access to the tool is problematic.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm. Absolutely. Like, a lot of times I know we were talking about domestic violence, right? A lot of time people are like, so why don't you just leave? If the person is abusing you, just leave. And it's like, if it was only so easy, especially when you have these other pieces of the puzzle, right? So even just talking about that financial abuse layer, right? If a woman doesn't have access to, the finances, or if everything that they spend is being watched,
Hmm.
or like they want to leave, they have to leave a lot of things behind. And if you have children, that just adds another
Hmm.
layer of complexity, right? And then let's talk about the fear that goes behind that. What does it mean to leave everything behind and to walk away from what you've built over the years, right? Like there's so many different layers and nuances that I feel like we don't talk about
Hmm.
enough. It's not so easy to just
Hmm.
leave, and then you go to work, and then you still have to function, and you still have to do all of the things while you're thinking about, well, maybe if I try to put $20 under my pillow, are they going to know that it's missing? Like it's just so,
Yeah.
yeah. You
I
want.
think it's interesting this idea that you named, the feeling of shame.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Shame is so key here. Okay.
Yes.
And here's why, right? It's as Tasha said earlier, like women will try to leave. So many women try to leave, and they
Mhm.
leave like 5 to 7 times
Yep.
before they actually leave, right? And so you have
Mm-hmm.
someone who's leaving all of those times,
Yeah.
right? And there could be friends that are then saying to them, just leave him, blah, 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 right? And
Mhm.
they're then feeling shame.
Yeah.
After a certain amount of
Mm-hmm.
time, they don't want to say it anymore. They don't want to
Yeah.
share that they're experiencing domestic violence at
Mm-hmm.
home, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to share
Mm-hmm.
the financial abuse that they're experiencing. They don't want to share any of these things because they're feeling ashamed of the fact
Yeah.
that they're still in the
Mm-hmm.
situation and they're still allowing their partner to treat them that way, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the key thing that we also need to look at, right?
Mhm.
So they're going to work, they're putting up with everything at work, they're coming back home, they can't even talk to friends or family because sometimes friends and family get fed up and they're like, come on, just leave them already. And then can't. So
Mm-hmm.
they're basically like encapsulated and trapped in that
Mm-hmm.
feeling of shame,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that right
Absolutely.
there can be immobilizing. You can
100%.
freeze in that place and not
Mm-hmm.
like an avenue to get out of that.
Absolutely. And I think it's even beyond the friendship circles too,
And
right? Like you have the family layer, right? So there's all of these complexities that you have to navigate. Like, what are they gonna think if I leave? What are they gonna think if I walk away? Then you have that spiritual aspect, right? As well. So whether, it's church or whether it's the temple or, whatever the place of worship, there's these um morals and ideals and values that go around, like relationships and marriage and divorce and all of these things. So it's like all of these complexities that people think through. Like, what does it actually mean to leave? What are people going to say if I leave? How am I going to survive if I leave? What's going to happen to my kids if I
Mhm.
leave? How am I going to sustain myself? What if work finds
Mhm.
out? Like,
yeah,
it's
but if you
complicated.
leave and you're unhoused, again, that last part about what if finds out, what if people at work
Yes.
find out,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? So there's so much fear and there's so much shame. And I
Yeah.
just want to name it, right? Because sometimes
Mhm.
you do need to be able to take it to someone who could just hold all of that for you. And it's not a fixing thing, right? Because I think sometimes
Mhm.
when we take it to family and friends, people are trying to fix it. But sometimes it's not fixable. You're in the situation, it is what it is, and you just need somebody to sit with you and for you to be able to unpack and process what is it like to be in this place in your life right now when you did not even imagine that you would be here one day.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's such an important piece, Charlene, that you've really touching
Mm.
on. That shame just goes into that layer of all types of abuse, whether we're talking about physical or financial. There's such
Yeah.
a layer in all of them of emotional abuse. And the shame plays into that, right?
Mhm,
Into that
Mm.
emotional
Yes.
abuse, because
mhm,
then it becomes layered with the emotional abuse and it becomes emotionally abusive, not only from the perpetrator, but then from other people
mhm,
who are then perpetuating those cycle of emotional abuse, because there
Mhm.
are the people who will really downplay, oh, you said you were going to leave before, you're really not going to do it this time, or
Mhm.
you're all talk and things like that, or if you leave, where are you going to go, and
mhm,
all of those things that we've seen very prevalent discussions in our communities. But then
mhm,
at the same
Mm.
time, what does that do from the emotional level of this individual, of this woman who is trying to leave, who is trying to, work to better herself and the situation that she's in? That's
mhm,
why it's so important that, if someone does come to you with their situation, what they're going through. Just listen or be able to guide them or point them in the direction of someone who is going
Mm,
to. Because I think too many times in our communities, people are saying those negatives,
Mhm.
right? They're saying those negatives, and that negative then becomes internalized
mm,
and it increases the shame,
Mhm.
right? It increases
mm,
the guilt. It increases all of those different pieces that then goes along and adds to the 5 to 7 times and the questioning and the guilt and the can I really do this and all of the narrative.
Mhm.
mm,
Mhm.
mhm, mhm. And yet we have to show up and smile.
Right?
Yeah.
Because, like, even in working with clients, and, so many of them are like, I'll just be sitting there at my desk, and this is like, oh, she's in a bad
Mhm.
mood today. It's like, can I please write my report in
Yeah.
peace?
Just be.
Oh, why do you look so
Mhm.
grumpy? Why do you look so
Mhm.
angry? You're so hostile. And, you know, when you add these layers and nuances that people are bringing themselves they to work in spite of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Dr. Judith Josephs, she talks about high performing women and the, how depression
Mm,
looks different in Black women, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like we don't have the luxury to actually like present. Many of us don't have the luxury to present in some of the typical ways that we see in the DSM-5 around depression. We
Yeah.
still have to get up. We still have to pull it together. We still
Mm-hmm.
have to show up at work. We still have to
Mm-hmm.
do a good job and do it 110%. We still
Mm-hmm.
have to take care of our kids. We still have to take care of our families. We still have to take care of our community. We still have to take care of our elderly. We still have to do all the things.
Yep.
Doesn't look like everybody else. We're still high performing,
Yeah.
right? And even when we're not getting that support at home, we still have to perform.
Yes.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. Yeah, it is. Absolutely, it is. It is exhausting. And this is why we're seeing those rates of burnout
Mhm,
increase. And it looks different from other
yes.
communities,
mhm,
right? Where you have women, Black women, who are literally kind of what I say is like you're standing at the edge of the cliff and the cliff is eroding under you and you're still standing there,
mhm,
right? Because you have to stand there and you have to do all the things, as you were saying, Shar.
mhm,
But it's eroding from under you, and it's exhausting to just hold it
Mhm.
and still be there and still stand up and
mhm,
still be that high performing individual while making sure everyone else is okay. And that could only last for so long. It is exhausting. And our communities are burnt out
mhm,
and not looking like the quote unquote burnout that the books are telling us.
mhm,
Yeah. it I think I mean, I'm no medical doctor, but it shows up in the body,
Yes, 100% it does. And then if you want to go
right?
into that, the ways in which it shows up in the body, the stress levels, the cortisol, things that are found in the body that should
Yes.
not be there. So we see, again, also not a medical doctor, but we're seeing
Hmm.
higher rates of certain diseases in Black female bodies.
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
You touched on an important piece, right? About, like, I love your imagery about, this that ground eroding from underneath. And I feel like, especially as Black women, like, we feel like if we let a piece of the paint chip, we're gonna bleed
Mhm.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we are so afraid. We are so armored. And I mean, when we're in dangerous situations, we need
We
the
need the
armor. Let's be
armor. Yep.
real.
And society kind of tells us to hold on to the
Force
armor.
Yeah, because if we let down our guard, we don't want to be caught off guard,
Yes.
right? That manager part is we do not want to be caught off
Yes.
guard. So we are afraid to let just a little piece of it
Yeah.
down because we are afraid that if we do that, if we let that guard down,
Mhm.
we are going to fall
Yeah,
apart.
I think the key
exactly.
is where, though. Where can we let it down? Right?
Girl, where? Who?
Exactly.
Who?
Loud, right? It's where can we let it down, right? We can't let it down at the Starbucks. We can't let it down at the workplace. We can't let it down even at
Who?
church.
Who? Who?
We can't let it down with certain other people because they're counting on us to be strong. Where do we let
Yeah.
it down then?
Yeah. That's why sisterhood is so important. It's so important. There's more studies coming out. Healthy,
Healthy
healthy.
sisterhood is
Yes,
important,
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Agreed. Very
Because
much so.
there's people who have sisterhood, they have friends. We've been friends since like elementary school,
That
and
doesn't count.
right? And yet, there's all of this backbiting and talking about each other and triangulation and all of these things that make the friendship unsafe, right? That you
Mhm.
can't tell one person without them going and telling other people behind your back. That's not safe,
Yeah, and that's
right?
not sisterhood.
And yeah, and so what's needed is healthy sisterhood, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like we have to talk about this for sure because I think we've yes, we need sisterhood, but I feel like people are forgetting how to do sisterhood because, like, I have a cell phone. I like my cell phone more than everybody. Okay, so I'm not knocking my, technology. We need it. We are on a radio station. That's because of technology. I understand that. I overstand. I overstand. But I feel like we have lost the essence of what it means to connect with
Yeah.
people, to check in on
Hmm.
people, right? Like, if you haven't heard from somebody, stop sending them gifs all the time. I'm guiltier than everybody. I send everybody
Right?
gifs. I send
I'm
every
like,
in the middle of the night. I am sending you a
right?
gif, but still, can you say something? I say, "How you doing?"
Yeah, but you're the one who sends just all the time.
Or reels or memes.
Right? So really what this
I
is,
will throw myself
right?
under the
Yeah.
bus. Thank you.
You're really coming out and telling on yourself today.
Yeah, I would tell the truth. I would tell the truth. I'm guiltier than everybody, but at least sometimes I'll say, "How you doing? You
Yes.
doing
Yeah.
all right?"
And that's your way of thinking and reaching out. It's like, oh, I saw this reel, I thought of you. It's funny.
I think you need a good laugh. If you don't receive gifts from me, don't feel lonely. Okay. All right.
Nobody's gonna be like, "Well, you should send me a GIF." But I think
Oh,
you're right. I
God.
think people don't know. Like honestly, Felicia, I think people don't know. They don't know
Yeah.
how to do like friendship and closeness and community anymore, right? Earlier today, I was actually doing a conference for one of the largest school boards here in Ontario,
Mm,
and talking to the kids. I did a workshop this morning, the workshop this afternoon, and talking to the kids about
mm,
this is what healthy relationships look like, right?
Mhm.
mm.
And recognizing the importance of it. Nobody teaches them. They teach them trigonometry, but they don't teach them how
Trigger who?
trigonometry, girl, right? But they
Oh.
don't teach them how to do healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Do you realize that they don't
Mm.
know how to do healthy conflict? Do you realize
Yes.
that they have no
Yes.
clue how to have like an actual conversation where they make a request? Do you realize that they don't know how to actually set healthy boundaries? They don't
Mhm.
know how to do relationships.
Or deal with disappointment.
Yeah, right? All of that. They have no clue,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And it's
So
not
true.
just the youth,
No.
right? It's
Mhm.
across the board. right? And so the truth is, yes, we actually don't know how to do this, and we won't know how to do it until we're taught.
Yeah.
Who's gonna teach?
And that's the
You don't
question.
hear I'm out here doing it in these streets.
But then,
I hear that.
how is it continued in the home? I think that's the
Yes,
question, right?
yes,
So it's
That's
amazing,
it.
yes, Char, you're going in and having the conversations with the children. How are we
mhm.
getting it to the parents? Because they may not also know how to build healthy relationships.
100%. A
Mm,
Yeah,
100%, right?
yeah,
And so again, it's a cultural and a systemic issue, right?
yes,
And
yes.
people just don't know, right?
Mhm,
I do worry about like the next
mm,
generation and how they're on their devices all the time, and
mhm,
they can't even sustain being in community and talking, looking, making eye contact, engaging in conversation without actually picking up their phone, right?
mhm,
I worry
mhm.
about that. And
Yeah,
yet, we got to do something about it, right?
mhm.
Even the little things that we can do, we got to do something about it.
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
I think what we
Yes.
need to do is have a whole conversation on healthy relationships and friendships, right? Because when we say relationships, most people think romantic, but there's
Mhm.
so many other types of relationships out there. We're in relation with one another. And
Yeah.
whether it is in the
Mm,
workplace, friendships, parents, romantic, adult children, smaller children, right? We need
Mhm.
to understand how are we building relationships. And a
Mhm.
lot of that relational piece was taken away from us, of course, over the last couple of years, COVID and whatnot, but also in how much devices that we are using, right? With our computers or cell phones or
mm,
things like that. And even in classrooms, like I know Shar could probably attest to this, where they're using a
mhm,
lot of devices within the classrooms too, right? So
Mhm.
how is that helping and or
100%.
hindering that classroom relationship? So I
Mhm.
think that can be a
Mhm.
really, not to give us more stuff to talk about, but to give us more stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Yes.
I think that would be a good conversation to have.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%, right? And so we're navigating this sense of loneliness. We're struggling to communicate. So we're talking to Chatty in the middle of the night.
Mhm,
And then we wake up and then we go to work.
mhm.
And then we start the cycle all over again,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And so we're for the women that are listening and they're just like, that's me. Yep. Where do they go from here? Like what are some things that we can have them walk away with tonight where they can have a glimmer of hope? They're going to bed soon, hopefully. If they have children, they're going to put their children to sleep. Um, and this might be weighing heavy on their hearts. Where do they go from here before they go to work tomorrow?
Yeah. Well, I think one place is, and I know this is going to be re-recorded, leave your comments. I don't know if there's a possibility to do anonymous, but if this resonates with you, leave your comments
Mm,
so that we can see it. And whether it is, I know we have a global audience, being able to connect
mm,
with those in your community and communities, finding
mm,
safe spaces. So whether again, community spaces, it could be an online space, right? A Facebook group,
mm.
but it's really about building community. And right now, community may look different than what you're accustomed to. Maybe the community that you already
Yes.
have, the communities that you've already built, maybe those are not the
Mm,
communities to sustain this next level that you're on. And
Mhm.
that's okay,
mhm,
because change may
mhm,
require something different. And I
Mhm.
think that's a hard thing
mhm,
too, right? That as we're talking about
mhm.
the workplace life, burnout, pressure, and everything else, there's a change, there's a shift.
Mhm.
And in that change and
Mhm.
shift, it means that you're not being supported right now in the ways
Yes.
in which you deserve to be supported. So that means there needs to be
Mm,
something else that is put in. And I know that's even hard to think of because change is hard and it's challenging and it's scary.
Mhm.
And you still deserve that support. So don't settle, right? Don't settle. It's out there. It is going to take a little bit of finding and nudging, but it's there.
Mhm. Mhm. I would say that I'm going to ask them a question. To keep maintaining this, what is it costing you, right? To keep doing what you're doing, right? Trying to be strong for everybody, holding it together at work, and trying to not let all of the arrows pierce you and wound you too much so you're bleeding out. Going home and trying to do all the things, not getting the support, and in turn also just feeling beaten down, right? So whether it's feeling beaten down in society, beaten down at work, beaten down at home, what is it costing you to just keep going this way? That's my question. And if you've gotten to the place that it costs too much, right? This is too much, too expensive, too dear. It costs too much. Then I want you to actually make a decision just
Mhm.
tonight. You're gonna get a little bit of support, right? I'm not saying that you gotta leave the situation and do all of this stuff. No. How can you be supported a little bit? What does that look like for you? It's going to be different for everybody. But for you, what does that look like to get a little bit of support? For some of you, it's going to mean that you're actually going to open up to that friend and tell the friend actually what's going on, right?
Mhm.
You're not going to keep up appearances and act like everything's perfect and wonderful and you've got it all together and your friend thinks that you don't need any help because you're good. No, you're going to actually open up and you're going to share with a friend and say, "Okay, can I be real with you? This is what I've actually been going through."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And choose wisely who you tell.
I was going to say that.
Yes.
But
Yes.
choose somebody.
Yes.
Choose somebody if you
Yes.
can to be vulnerable with. Right?
Yeah.
For some of you, it's
Yes.
going to be different. For some of you,
Mm,
it's going to be like, I don't have anyone in my life who I can be vulnerable with. Right? So that means that you're going to reach out to a therapist and you're going to talk and say, hey, I need some support. I just need to get through what I'm going through right now. Can you see me?
Yeah.
And you have that
mm,
space, even if it's just for an hour, right? An hour a week for you to just be vulnerable and for you to be real and for you to actually like unpack it. Take the armor off and unpack the stuff that's in your heart, the stuff that's on your shoulders, the stuff that's in your head that you just take it, put it down, and just look at it. We call it externalizing. We're going to take it and put it out in front of us so we can look at it, right? Because if you have that opportunity to do that, it
Yeah.
might make a huge difference,
Make it
right?
look
mm,
different. Yeah.
But what I don't want you to do is just stay in it, right?
mm,
It's time to make a shift, and it doesn't have to be a big shift, is what I'm trying to say. It could be a small shift, but it's time to actually make a shift for something better for
mm,
yourself. That's how you model for the next generation. You realize that, right? You can't just tell them things. You got to model it for them. So that's how you model it,
mm,
right? Yes, the situation's been like that all the way through. Yes, I get that. But now it's time to make a shift. What is it costing you? And do you want to keep paying that price still?
Love
mhm.
that.
You
Love
know,
that.
and I would say that, it's okay if you need to throw little pebbles at a person to see how they catch it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, if I give them this little tiny pebble, I wonder what will
Mhm,
happen. Okay, and then you share that little pebble and see how they hold
mhm,
it, right? Because I think sometimes we're afraid to, and rightfully so, to throw the big rock
Mhm.
stone, right? So pick up the tiny pebble, make a little ripple until you can build that
Mhm.
courage to share. But yes, find a therapist. I know at least where we're from, you can do
Mhm.
consultations. Book your consultations until you find the right fit for you. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be the first
Mhm.
pup. I mean, the likelihood of finding it in your first pup, I mean, you never know. It happens, but sometimes it
Mhm.
doesn't, and that's okay. If you have tried therapy in the past and you said, "Why? Me not like that," try again. Okay, just find a good fit for
Yes.
you,
Yes.
because therapeutic fit is
Mhm.
everything.
Yes. Yes.
That is like one of the for successful therapy, you have to have a good
Mhm.
Yes.
fit.
And someone who sees
Yeah,
you and gets your nuances and the different pieces, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
The pieces of you.
yes,
Yeah. And someone who can
yes,
hold out hope for you, even when you don't feel it
Mm,
yes,
yourself right now, right? Find somebody who can hold that hope for you until you can hold that hope for yourself.
yeah.
100%. And again, are what we're talking about is for you to find somewhere where you can bring your whole
Mhm.
self,
Exactly.
and that they won't say don't bring that self.
Yes.
They want to be able to bring your whole
All of
self.
you.
That is so
Mhm.
important. And I want to also remind you that before you were a professional, before you were a parent, before you were all of these things, a wife, before you were a friend, you were
Yeah.
you. And I find that in a lot of these situations that we talked about tonight, as you've gone through it, you're going through it, you lose sight of yourself.
Mhm.
So get on that journey of finding yourself
Mhm.
again, like truly finding yourself. You are more than the worker
Mhm.
at the workplace or the professional or the
Mhm.
entrepreneur. You're more than a
Mhm.
mom,
Mm,
you're more than a
Mhm.
friend. Find yourself.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you
Yeah.
guys could leave one last little gem for the Love Bay family, what would you leave
I'm gonna
tonight?
piggyback on what you just said. All right. Your value is
Mm,
in who you are, not in what you do. Wrote that
Yeah.
on a
mm,
piece of paper and I stuck it in my bathroom cabinet for my kids.
mm.
Every day they open it to get their toothbrushes, they see it. Your value is in who you are and not what you do. Right? And so I
Absolutely.
hope that our listeners hear that too. Right? Your value, right? Really hear my voice. Your value is in who you are as a person, not in the things that you do.
Mm,
Love that. Love that.
beautiful.
Oh, I'm going to piggyback off of Charlene and what you said around the reaching out for support. It's not,
Mm,
and I will say this, and I've said this to many people before, not everyone that you reach out to for support can hold what you
mm,
have and what you need support with.
Mhm.
And
100%.
go to the people who can support you. I think a
Mhm.
lot of times what
Yeah.
happens, people go to
Mm,
people hoping and praying and wishing that finally
Mhm.
they can validate, right?
Mhm.
Finally, they're going to validate me. Finally, they can hold my stuff. Stop going to the people who have already shown you that they cannot,
Mhm.
right? Take your worth out of their hands and put into
Mhm.
your hands and find the actual people who can support you.
mm,
Mhm.
100%.
Mhm.
Mm, 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 mm. All right. So, as we come to the end of tonight's conversation, I want to leave you with this. Sometimes it's not that you're too much, and it's not that you're not strong enough. It's that you've been carrying more than people ever knew. And you're still showing up, and that deserves to be acknowledged and seen tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you, ladies. Thank you, Charlene and Natasha, for your honesty, your insight, and the space that you helped to create tonight. And thank you to our Love Bay family for listening, for engaging, and for growing with us. Next week on the Mental Health Hour, we move into a deeply powerful and intimate conversation. Holding Life and Loss, a doula story of birth, grief, and healing. I'll be joined by Danielle James, community educator, doula, and advocate, for a conversation that holds both the beauty and the complexity of life's most tender moments. Drawing on her experience supporting over 200 families, Danielle shares that what it means to witness birth, grief, and healing up close, both personally and professionally, and how these experiences shape the way we care for mothers, families, and our communities. Together, we'll explore pregnancy and postpartum transitions, the realities of pregnancy loss, and the importance of culturally grounded care and reproductive justice. Danielle also brings powerful insight from her work advancing Black maternal health, equity, and community care across Canada. This is a conversation about resilience, compassion, and the sacred work of supporting life in all of its complexities. Until then, Love Bay family, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember your healing matters, your voice matters, and even the parts of you you've had to carry quietly deserves care too. Good night, Love Bay.